Hello, I'm Wendy Jelbert and welcome to my top tips for acrylic artists. When we've completed all our exercises and demonstrations and projects, hopefully you'll become a more adventurous and inspired artist. So let's get started. This is a project that I've tried out with my students and they absolutely loved it, so I thought perhaps you would like to have a go. This is a seaside wooden groin and it encapsulates all the additives that we've used so far. First of all, we're going to be using cling film, and this is forming the back distance C here. This is the masking fluid for the foam running over the stones, and some of the stones are done in texture paste and eggshells, and watery acrylics are applied over the top and a little bit more thicker acrylics in the foreground. So there's lots for us to do. We're going to be painting this groin scene in 3 different ways, and we're going to start with using masking fluid. And I've applied the masking fluid with the ruling drawing pen onto the sides of the groin, to the foam on the sea, and to the pebbles in the foreground, making sure that the pebbles are larger as they come towards us and smaller as they go away. The next step is to apply some brown for the wood in the foreground here and place some cling film over that to form a lovely wooden texture. So we're putting some violet, some raw umber and a touch of yellow ochre in there for the right colouring. There we go. We've got to keep it quite wet, a little bit dark towards the bottom here, and then apply our cling film. Now again, make it very pleaty, pull it and place that in the wet paint, making sure there's some appropriate lines, and you can do that with the edge of your nail. There we are. And just allow that to dry. Now the paint has dried, I'm going to pull the cling film off, and this exposes the wooden texturing. First of all, I'm going to put the background colour in of cobalt blue and white. I'm putting this in fairly watery into the background, but varying the blue intensities with perhaps a tiny bit of aquamarine coming in round the back. There we are, putting that in. So it's tucking in round the back, and again putting some waves in round there, and bringing this down over the masking fluid in the foreground, around there, a bit more aquamarine. There we are. A bit more colour, perhaps a few waves through there. And while that's drying, I'm going to bring in the colour of the stones, yellow ochre. I've got to be careful too of giving a feeling of distance, so that some of this is going to have some violets in there and some raw umber. There we are. And that's going over the masking fluid, which always has to be absolutely dry. There we go. I might just lift a tiny bit of this. There we are, just a little bit, making it a bit lighter, and then continuing down. letting it dry in a minute by just putting in some shadowy areas which will show up these extra shapes when I rub the masking fluid off. So, and just placing these last woodeny groins in, perhaps with a touch of blue. I'm going to vary the colour just slightly and intensify the colour just at the bottoms and at the side, and then we'll let this dry and rub off the masking fluid in a minute. One tiny bit down here. And what we could do, just before we stop, a little tiny bit of this. I love this texturing. So useful. And you always use your little finger and tap down so it splinters the pigment on the surface. Right, we'll let that dry. Now it's dried, I'm going to rub the masking fluid off to expose the pebbles. And rub very hard. The groin, the wood bits on the groin, and little bits of surf. There we go. Then I can paint a few shadows on the groin with blue and brown. There we are, bring those in. So this gives a bit of contrast. And on the back, a little bit more. So we've got some nice dark shapes against the lighter sea. A bit more yellowy orange perhaps. I'm going to put a bit of orange in there. And wash this over. So we've got orange, yellow ochre and brown for the pebbles. And I'm going to wash this just a little bit more so it's softer. And then we're going to form longer shadows around the base of these groins so it embeds them into their surroundings and makes them look a little bit more natural. So this is cobalt blue with a little bit of violet, and that takes that into the wood and makes it more natural, as I said. And this can be just worked in with the foam to highlight the action. So we've got some cling film, some masking fluid to form the pebbles and the extra bit of wood, and this lovely cling film texturing just rounds the whole scene off beautifully.